All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody out to City Council. It's a budget night, so I expected a big turnout. Everyone looks so excited, have their calculator. Look at that smile. She's all excited about the numbers. This is awesome. All right, let's go ahead and call it to order. Starting with the roll call.
Mayor Bagley?
Here.
Council members Christensen? Here. Finley? Here. Martin? Here. Peck? Rodriguez? Here. Waters? Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, great. Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, any agenda items for our city manager? All right, seeing none. Let's go ahead and have our one public who wants to be heard. Mr. Strider Benston, is he here? Yeah, sorry, this is it, buddy. You almost missed it. I know, first and last. We kept it nice for you.
All right. You really caught me off guard. Thank you. Mayor Bagley, Council. I'm Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. And I just need to reassert as cleanly as I can that our entire concept of democracy and self-government and people's government, as Abraham Lincoln said, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, is in serious jeopardy at this very moment. Some of you may know I got 8 columns in the last 2 days. The Boulder Daily Camera and the Longmont Times Call Saturday and Sunday, I wrote an article about John McCain. And I indicated that I have disagreed with him throughout his entire career on perhaps 88% of every policy position we have mutually addressed. But he had integrity. He grew up in an environment with a philosophy, and he adhered to that pretty much. And he got into the United States Senate, which used to be known as the best debating society in the world. Now it's fallen into a bunch of cronies, and you don't hardly ever see anything worthwhile. But he took it seriously. And he met with Russ Feingold. He met with John Kerry. He met with Dianne Feinstein. They went places together. They addressed the issues of the day in the world. And he supported, like with Feingold, the McCain-Feingold proposal to stop corporate corruption destroying our democratic processes by finance reform, immigration reform. I just appreciate that someone that I've opposed on almost everything had integrity to be a real man and a real human being. And Bob Woodward just came out with a book called Fear Today. Look at what's going on. Our survival as a country and as a democracy is at stake right now. And if the Supreme Court flips over into pure fascism, we don't know what's going to happen. I'll stop there, and the question mark is really big. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benston. All right, let's go ahead. Any special reports and presentations other than what we're all here for?
The only thing I wanted to say is that we knew a couple of you were going to be gone on Friday, and so we're going to move the Front Range presentation when we have an entire council there. but we still have the work session scheduled, and we're having parking issues at this building. So wanted to ask council, the remaining council members that were going to be here, do you want to do it? And if so, we need to move it to the service center. Utility center.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, have fun. No, I'm kidding. I won't be here. Dr. Waters, what do you think? Should they have a meeting? I think you guys should go ahead and have a meeting. You could go nuts.
So we're going to have to move the location because of parking related to construction. To the utility center. We'll send out a map.
All right, that it?
Okay, that's it.
All right, anything else?
No more comments.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the 2019 budget presentation.
So I'm going to introduce Joanne Zia. She's going to start off going over compensation for council. Feel free to, we weren't sure about technology, so we're also handing out copies of the presentation. But feel free to ask questions as she's going through her presentation. Joanne, tell me which one it is. This one? Yep. They did get it fixed.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'd like to walk you through our pay plan recommendations, our rationale for pay plan recommendations, and also talk a little bit about healthcare and the healthcare increases that we have in the 2019 budget. Some of these slides will probably seem pretty familiar from prior years, and these are, I guess, basically our tenets for the compensation system that we have. What we're looking to do is make sure that we're paying prevailing market rates for our positions, and that's to make sure that we're maintaining competitiveness, that we are recognizing our employees, and that we can retain. We do have a philosophy that we'd like to get to 102% of market, and the reason for that is because we do have a relatively lean staff that does a tremendous amount of work, largely matching other cities and other areas, but with more responsibilities for that. So because of that, 102 is our goal. That is a goal. It's not something that we meet every year. We did get to 101% last year, but we do recognize that there are challenges within the budget. And this year what we're looking to do is make sure that we retain 100% of market. What our commitments have been for compensation for council as well as employees is to make sure that we're continuing to maintain market midpoint and taking a look at what is that midpoint. So we will make sure that we're going through all of our, we're making sure that we're taking a look at competitive surveys, that we're looking at both other cities as well as in positions where they may compete not necessarily just with other cities and they're competing with private industry. We look at that as well. The other commitment that we've made is to make sure that we're awarding employees who have exceptional contributions. So there are employees that are certainly throughout the city maintaining their position. There are other employees throughout the city that really are just going above and beyond in an exceptional way. So exceptional performance has been brought into our system as a way to reward that and retain those employees. There are a significant number of salary sources, so there are 2 slides that talk about what the sources we use are. We try to match each position with the source that is the best fit for it. So the first slide talks about Employers Council. That used to be called Mountain States Employers Council. It is the same Employers Council, but they've spread their reach past just Colorado and the Mountain States, so they've made a name change for that. So the surveys are the same, but the title has changed. And we do use Colorado surveys. We also use public employer surveys. For some of our areas that we need to get a little bit more specific, we'll use specific surveys such as the Rural Electric Survey, the Library Survey, the Utility Survey. Outside of the Employers Council, we also have a number of surveys that we use throughout the industries. So we use APPA for public power. We use ONET and Economic Research Institute, which are government sites that are a little bit more broad for positions that don't necessarily match as well for those employer councils. And we also have this year done a significant amount of direct contact with other municipalities. And the reason for that is because we were seeing changes in the surveys from year to year based on who's participating in one particular year and not another. So we supplemented that with direct contact and made sure that we matched those positions to get a little bit more of a concrete data set. This year, something new, we did a full review of each of our benchmarks. We met with all of our directors throughout the city and talked about what is the benchmark for that position, made sure they understood what that benchmark was, and asked for feedback on it. We had 73 positions where the directors asked us to take a look and said, maybe that's not the best match, we're not sure. Take a look, see if there is something that matches a little bit more specifically. So we went back and we researched those 73 positions. With those researched, we found that 58 of them needed to be adjusted. 15 of them we found that the benchmark that we had was probably the best match. This is a slide that we go over each year, just taking a look at our positions in different classifications as compared to the labor market. We do match up pretty well. We're hitting the 98, 99% in almost all of these. The first column talks about what is our midpoint compared to midpoint, and then the second and third column are what are our actual salaries looking like. The next few slides just are a reinforcement for our initial conversation in terms of maintaining market midpoint. We are in a pretty competitive market at this point. Unemployment is pretty low nationally. It's even more competitive within Colorado. We do expect that that's going to continue to be the case. These are some local projections for unemployment, and those are even lower than Colorado as a whole, and well lower than the national average. Current projections within the national average, they're looking at about 3 to 3.2% increase in real wages, and that's a combination of wage changes within the salary range as well as individuals' increases. Colorado Metro is actually looking pretty similar to the national average in this area. Salary ranges on this slide, just something to keep in mind, is 1.8%, so we are actually matching that in our recommendations. We do know that there are some changes outside of the annual budget process in 2 cities. So Greeley and Fort Collins have both indicated to us that there are going to be changes within their pay plans outside of their normal budget cycle. A couple things to keep in mind with employees. When I've been going through HR training, a lot of times people will say compensation is not the most important thing. There's a lot of other things that are more important for retention. What's interesting to me is as surveys have been coming out the last few years, compensation has actually been rising in individuals' decisions to stay or retain their position. So this recent survey actually is showing it as the most important factor in deciding to accept a job offer. And it's also showing that close to half of employees will be enticed to leave if there's something with a better salary or pay. So that's relatively new. This is also a little bit startling. More than a quarter of individuals will actively seek, and over half are passively open. So just something to kind of chew on to make sure that we are maintaining that competitiveness. These are some areas that are critical shortage areas nationwide that could have some impact to municipal jobs.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The employee attitude survey, was that our employees?
No, that's a national survey.
Okay, we are in trouble. If a quarter of our employees are looking for work, Harold, you've got problems. All right, so just making sure. All right.
No, and actually this slide actually talks to that a little bit. Our turnover is still relatively low. We're at about 7.7% for 2017, but we are seeing a little bit of an uptick in 2018. We're at 6.6, and we're halfway through the year. So just something, it is still relatively low, but I think it's a combination of the labor market being tight as well as many of our employees are eligible for retirement. So we have 23.2% of current employees are eligible right now. Some costs, if we do have increased turnover, there's separation, hiring costs, training, productivity. And then there's always that risk of just knowledge changes. So with 2018, just to try to maintain that competitiveness while still being cognizant of cost, we are recommending to match the labor market salary range increase at the 1.8%. And we are suggesting to retain the 2% allocation that we have for exceptional pay.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just a quick question. That's 2% of the compensation budget.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And that's pretty much set up as a per department, and then it's allocated to those who are exceptional performers.
And so for some of the new council members, so it is allocated by department. The departments go through and make recommendations, and we have a form that they have to fill out as they're going through that. Joanne and I actually review all of those recommendations for exceptional performance, and then to make sure that there's consistency across the organization and how we're implementing those pieces. At times, the conversation can really be, well, why this, or why wasn't this person included in that? So it's a fairly in-depth conversation as we go through that.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. The first bullet point here, the must be meeting or exceeding expectations for a bonus for employees. I have a problem with bonus for meeting expectations. I mean, if they're not meeting expectations, they're not doing a good job. They're not doing their job, correct? Am I correct in that? So wouldn't it be exceptional, above and beyond what they're supposed to be doing? That meeting expectations kind of bothers me a little bit.
So this is really for employees that are above the market midpoint, but so what we say is you have to meet market, and what we had is a lot of folks, and we talked to council about this before, so we have a lot of folks that may be above market for a number of reasons, and so if they're meeting the expectation, they get what any other employee would get for meeting expectation. This is not the exceptional performance piece.
So if they're hired below market,
Then we move them up.
then they move up to
We
market.
move them up to market, and then if they're exceeding expectations,
course.
that's the 2% that we adjust above that.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
So these are additional.
I'm sorry, Dr. Waters?
Just one quick follow-on. Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Those who are eligible and earn the bonus payment, that's a one-time, it's a lump sum as well, or is that baked into their base compensation?
We put it into the base compensation, but you have to continue exceeding. So, simple answer. So if you're at 100% of market and you're awarded 102%, you have to continue exceeding expectations to remain at that 2%. So if the market moves 2% and you don't exceed it, then we keep you
You're
at
frozen
market.
in that
You're
cycle.
frozen until the market catches up to you, but that is something you have to continue doing on an annual basis.
Thanks.
All right, Q is clear. Here we go.
So the exceptional pay is actually not the bonus. The bonus here that is being recommended is for individuals that are above market. So we used to have a number of individuals that were above market because we had a different salary structure. That has been steadily coming down over the years. So we are at a smaller number of individuals that are already exceeding their market. Those individuals would be the individuals that would be targeted for this lump sum. And it would really be because they would not be receiving an increase through no fault of their own. It's just that their market was high. In this particular case, because 101 was last year's target, 100 is this year's target, that lump sum would be 0.8% of salary as opposed to 1.8. The second bullet talks about those that are below the market. So they might have been hired below the market, or their market might have dramatically shifted, and those individuals could be increased up to 5% to bring them to market. Collective bargaining, that will be coming here separate as those contracts are finalized. So we did negotiate with both police and fire, and those contracts will be presented shortly to council. There are recommendations in the 2019 pay plan at this point. Those are our best guess. We will get a little bit more specific as those contracts come to council.
Just in terms of on that piece with council, just to let you know that as we went through this, we wanted to remain rooted in the same philosophy that we use for the entire organization, and in terms of establishing what market is. And so that was a big piece of the conversation that we had in the process, and we utilized the same methodology.
And then that methodology also flows through to LPC. There's a little bit of a difference in how that rate is calculated because we create steps, but the steps actually do mirror what we see in the market for those positions. So the LPC steps would just be adjusted according to that same philosophy to make sure that they are at market. And those average increases are in line with those open range positions as well. Slight recommended change to the range. This year we had 90 to 108 to reflect that 101. This year we would just drop that down to 90 to 107, and that's really just to keep that 7% spread for the exceptional performers.
And again, as a information point for the newer council members, we had some really wide ranges that were unachievable. And so what we did is we started working on bringing those ranges in where they were actually achievable via the exceptional performance piece of the compensation plan.
And then just a little bit more information on the exceptional performance. So those that would be awarded exceptional performance need to meet their general requirements. They have to exceed those expectations. Then in addition to that, they need to make some significant contributions to the organization, and that can be citywide, department-wide, and or division plans. So it has to be something specific that they're picking up, something that's above and beyond their daily responsibilities. And then we also have a category for making sure that somebody's contributing to a positive work environment and making sure they're exemplifying the city attributes. Those nomination forms, I think Harold talked about this briefly, those are sent from the managers to the directors. The directors look at those, approve those, and then move forward with recommendations. They meet with Harold and I, and they explain those recommendations, and we move forward with it at that point. We have some guidelines in terms of what that salary would look like. So if you have one additional criteria that you're really excelling in, you're looking at probably 102%. And then if you have additional, then you could recommend additional, which would be within those constraints of that 2% of department budget. Benefits in 2018.
Are there any questions on compensation? Any additional questions?
Yes, there are. Dr. Waters?
Thank you. Just real quickly, in a department, you've got 2% set aside. I'm assuming the director, the general manager makes those decisions with your review and approval. That 2% is going to only spread so far. What percentage, I know it would vary, you're not locked into this, but give me an idea of what percentage of employees in a group, in a work group or in a department might earn the extraordinary pay award?
So we've been seeing probably a low number of employees, and that's because our department directors have been relatively conservative in making those recommendations. We probably have 2 or 3 employees that are at that top 7%, and then significantly more that are at that 2 or 3% level. But each year we've had our departments have remaining budget because they don't want to allocate all of it and then be in a situation the next year where they don't have the ability to make shifts.
Well, my next question was going to be, is there any money left on the table ever? And the
Yes.
answer is, it sounds like there is.
And you know, when we say we have conversations, the intent of this is to reward folks that perform at a high level. When they have money left over, we ask the question, are you sure you haven't missed anyone? In the majority of cases, the answer is no. There's been a few where we've gone back. But as they're evaluating this, all of them do it as a team and a team of managers within the group. So it's not just Department A evaluating. It's Department A, B, and C having a conversation about the work that they do, and then they're deciding as a group. And so it's been really great for me to see that kind of interaction because I think we're really getting at those folks that need to be at this level.
I just want to say, for a government entity to be able to have a performance-based compensation program and administer it so it's clear and transparent and fair and doesn't rankle and all kind, and I'm certain there are issues, but I got to say good on you for making it work.
What I will say is there are issues. and there's always somebody that's asking questions. But the way that we're doing it, I can answer those questions and provide the information to deal with whether somebody thinks they should have got more or why did somebody get it. I can very clearly articulate why that person is in the spot that they're in.
We've also seen some departments that have recommended individuals that are not in their department based on the impact that they've had on their particular work team. So it's been a program that, you know, communication is always the interesting part of it, but it's well worth it.
Just out of curiosity, what do we pay for health benefits? What percent?
Jim, you're going to have to help me with that percentage.
Is it, yeah, just what is it, 50, 75%? What do we provide up?
It depends on the,
I'm just curious, so like if I work for the city, what percentage of my health care do we pay?
well, that depends. What percentage does the employee pay? That depends on the candidate or on the type of coverage covered. So if
Right.
you select individual, you're paying, we pay the full percentage.
Okay.
If you select individual plus one, then you're paying is 85%, or you're paying 15%.
All right. Okay, how many, and then what percentage of our employees don't use our benefits?
Just about everybody, I think, picks up at least the individual
Okay,
coverage.
all right,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. Thank you.
There's not
All right, we'll move on to council comment. Just kidding. Oh, if only. Do you want to go with Jim Golden? Or do you want to go with?
we
Oh, you got two more
we're
slides?
gonna-
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay. Just wanted to briefly talk about benefits because it was a very significant increase that we had this year. It was 9.99%. We had some serious large claims that did hit us this year. We also were lower than the average every year for the last 11 years, and I think the combination of those two just kind of caught up with us in one shot. What we are seeing, though, is that our premium cost is still in line, and we've been able to manage that without a reduction in any plan provisions. So it is kind of a hit this year, but it appears to be in line with what we would expect given the way that our plan has been running. One of the positives is that we haven't had any increases to other benefit plans, so it's really just the health insurance that we've been having the increase to, and it's largely because of those large claims.
We have quite a few in the queue. So, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. This was a good presentation. I have a bunch of questions about retirement.
Jim is going to get to that in his
okay.
presentation.
All right. I'll wait then.
Do you want to give your last slide before we get the rest of the queue?
Sure. Future direction, we're just looking to continue to, I think, maintain what our goals are. So just wanted to reiterate the pay target, again, is just to try to get to 102 as we can. So as we've been describing that to employees, we're saying that's what we're striving to do. It's very dependent on our city's condition. It's dependent on what else is essential, but that is still a goal. We do want to continue in HR to make sure that we're continuing to add data sources so that we can get alignment with positions. I think we're pretty close to being there, but there are always positions that are unique, and so the closer we can get those, the better off we are. And then next year, because we did do the benchmark audit last year, we will go back, we'll take a look at our job descriptions and just make sure that those classifications remain accurate. What we don't want is to be waiting several years and then go back and be taking a look at positions and we're matching them based on a job description that's not accurate. So that'll be where we move next year again.
That's also based in how we approach it, because one of the things that I think that we're challenged with in any large organization is creep of the position. And if there's going to be added duties and responsibilities, we need to push that through our budget cycle versus just continuing to creep upward versus if there's just something true there that's amiss in the job descriptions. And that's why we're trying to get into a regular schedule of doing that. We went through it and we found several a few years ago that had changed over the last 7 years, and we had to go in and readjust.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where recommend audits come in, because the audits would be where the departments would need to go if they need to add those duties.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Is this the right time to ask about the operating expenses breakdown for health that we have in our packets, or is that later on?
That'll be with Jim in the
Okay.
financials.
All right, that cleared the queue out pretty good.
All right. Well,
So
thank you.
thank you very much. you want to go with Mr. Golden or Tom Roniotis? I say Jim. Let Tom rot back there. I'm angry with him. He's. I'm kidding, by the way. He's retiring. He's moving on. We're gonna miss him. Yeah, no, he's not retiring. Retiring from the city, but he's got big plans. Love you, Tom. Love you.
Mayor Bagley, yes.
No.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I'm Jim Golden, Chief Financial Officer. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit from where Joanne left off, talking about health benefits. I wanted to give you the financial status of our health benefit fund. So what we do is we have a fund where we pay all of our health and medical, dental, life, disability benefits from. We have wellness costs as well that come from there. So what we do is we fund this through contributions throughout the organization based as a percentage of payroll. And so I give you an updated status of this from year to year. I'm going to skip everything that Joanne has already talked about, except for this last bullet here. And that's the contributions that are being made that I just referred to are going up from 16% of payroll to 16.5%. And most of that is driven by that 9.9% increase in the health costs. It's a well-funded insurance fund, and so we actually were generating a surplus, so we were able to actually reduce the amount of the increase. Instead of having like a 9.9% increase that would have taken it up to about 17.5%, we only had to do about a third of that because of the status of the fund. Type of costs that we have in there, we project $65,000 for wellness incentive costs, $430,000 for OPEB liability costs. That's we do allow our retirees until they get onto Medicare to be able to participate in our insurance coverage. At their cost, they need to pay the full cost. And so it's a bit of a subsidized cost because of the fact that they're getting at the same cost as other employees are versus a retiree's cost. And so that is the OPEB cost, is that the city is, in a sense, is subsidizing that benefit to those employees. So we have to do an actuarial assessment of that liability every other year, and currently our costs there are about $430,000 a year that we put away into a trust for that purpose. We have $51,000 in change for police and fire physicals that we now budget out of this fund or expend out of this fund. And then we're projecting that we're going to end this fund at just over $8 million in 2018. There's a pro forma in your packet tonight. I think it's attachment A on page S6, and that is showing you what I'm projecting out for 18 and as well for 19.
Jim? Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I noticed on the operating expenses breakdown that you gave us that there was a jump between 2017 and 2018 for the police and fire physicals. What changed?
What changed is that the fire, well, both employees, but there's hesitancy for them to participate in that in the past, and so they are participating more fully in that. I think it's just been a concern about whether or not they wanted to have that information made available to the city. So we've been budgeting that. It's a benefit that we offer to them, but that we don't force them to take it, and there's been more participation in 2018 than there has been in the past.
Is that the same explanation as the jump in the wellness incentive?
No, actually, I don't think that the wellness incentive is a projected cost if we have full participation. I think our actual costs and I don't have that in front of me right now, but I don't think there's much of a change in cost from 17 to 18. But if there is, it's just because we may have greater participation by our employees.
It's greater than double the change. It's not a huge number, but it's more than double, so.
Then it might be a
Correct.
projected number, and we haven't, we pay that out at the end of the year, so the actual expense to date is 0 right now. So my guess is that we were saying if we get this level of participation, that's what we've been budgeting at for years, and we've had a hard time getting folks to reach that level. So we did increase some of the benefits this year to try to incent greater participation. I don't know if we're going to be reaching that number that you're looking at for 18, though.
So one of the things that we found is that participation in the wellness program was pretty stagnant. And so not this year, but last year as part of, I'm trying to remember if it was part of the budget presentation, we talked to council about fundamentally changing the program because it was sort of an all or nothing in terms of what you could get. And what we did is we actually created different levels. So folks could, if you met the first level, you could get, I believe it's a cash piece. And then if you did your exercise every month, then you could qualify for a day off. And we were moving through it because what we're trying to do is pick up the participation in that, because we know there's a direct correlation between participation in that program and then your overall cost within the health fund.
It's a $130 annual benefit, that cash benefit that is given as an incentive, and then after that, there's the day off benefit. But so I think it was all based on our hope to try to get more people to participate. So.
And then when you look, I think, in the operating revenues, some of the Kaiser reimbursements, I think, go into that as well, to that number. Is that correct? Is that the right line item?
That's down there individually by itself.
Right.
So.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Going up to the operating revenue employee contributions on healthcare, does Kaiser have, does that cover dental and vision through Kaiser? And the reason I'm asking that is that on the slide, the last slide, it said there were no other increases in health coverage. But I do see in dental and vision that there's a significant increase for the employees' contribution. Am I looking at this correctly? That that their contribution to those benefits have gone up?
The actual benefit cost has not gone up for an employee. We have had growth in the number of employees.
The number,
And so
okay.
that's reflecting the dollar value of contributions that have been made in 18 over 17.
Okay.
So we have, our dental is Delta Dental. Our vision is VSP Vision. And so not only do the number of employees, but if we have folks starting to move their family members over into it,
Then it goes up.
that increases the number of people that actually take advantage of it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Mary Pro Tem.
So Harold, you do have statistics about the correlation between participating in the wellness program and it decreasing the overall costs of medical needs.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
provide this to you.
That's good, though.
What I did is really off of more what you look at nationally. So generally,
Yeah.
typically around 5% of your claims can generate over 50% of the cost, and they typically are your catastrophic claims. And so part of the wellness in what we do is, one of the requirements, for example, is you get a biometric blood panel every year to evaluate your, and we don't know the information. It's completely confidential, but if you do that, then you know where you are on your A1C panel or your lipid panel, monitoring blood pressure and those types of things. Are you controlling your blood pressure via medication? Because we know those are all steps that then impact that catastrophic level of claim.
Right.
Um,
Okay. All
But
right.
yeah, I can
Thank
get you the statistics and.
That's okay.
And we,
That's
just
good,
as a,
though.
we partner with Kaiser on that in terms of
Yeah,
what we
they have a very
evaluate.
good
We have a
program.
wellness committee, and then Sheen is continuing to adopt it. So for example, some of the things we did to increase participation is instead of doing the standard, we're going to have meetings in here and you come to them, she actually goes out to the training meetings for all of the departments and engages them. She's now getting team leaders in various departments across the organization to help create more interest in the program. And so if council's ever interested, we can ask Sheena to provide you with information or give you a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, last comment on the health benefit fund is that we project that it'll just go up slightly in 2008 and 19 based on the numbers that we have in that pro forma. Move into the pension plans. So we have three defined benefit pension plans here at the city. Two of them are closed plans for police and fire employees that most of them were hired before, all of them were hired before 1977. And so they're all retired or else they're beneficiaries within the plan. There's about 9 employees in each plan. We maintain that as long as they're receiving the benefits. The old hire police pension plan, and by the way, last year, 2017, we had pretty strong investment returns, which in turn had an impact on our funding status for each of these 3 defined benefit plans. So the old hire pension plan actually just missed becoming fully funded. It's 99.4% funded, unfunded liability of $8,749. We have left the same budgeted level of contribution in the 2018 budget of $24,168 to this plan to amortize the remaining liability. I'm assuming we will not need to make any more contributions after 2018. This is a higher amount than what's required. If we have returns that do not meet the 7.5% assumption, that in turn increases the amount of the requirements. So I'm trying to make sure this plan gets fully funded and stays there. The old hire fire plan has been fully funded. It is 118.7% funded as of the beginning of this year. Has a negative unfunded liability of almost $500,000. We have not been contributing to this plan for a number of years now since it's reached full funding status. So we are proposing a modest benefit increase, or will be, I should say, for the 9 participants in the old hire fire plan. Haven't had an increase in quite some time. I will be bringing you that information probably next month. It's not a part of the budget because, as I said, they were not making contributions to this plan any further. So it'll be an action that you'll need to pass an ordinance on, and it'll be bringing it to you before the end of the year for that purpose. And then the third one is the general employees retirement plan. That one's an active plan. All employees except for uniform police and fire are in this plan. So a couple years ago, we changed the funding policy of the plan. That's what this slide is addressing. It is trying to now amortize the unfunded liability over a closed period. By having a closed period instead of an open period, we diminish the amount of time we're doing this over, and hopefully, finally, we'll reach full funding. It does take a long period of time, shooting for over 30 years. At the beginning of this year, we would be funding the unfunded liability over 27 years from this year. We're trying to aggressively address this funding status of this plan anyway. It was always fully funded until 2008 when the market had its problems, and we in turn lost our full funded status in all of our plans. So this year, the unfunded liability is $11.7 million. The plan is 92.9% funded versus last year we were at $12.7 million unfunded liability and 91.8% funding. So it takes a lot to move this thing towards 100%. We're in a good position. If you've heard about other public plans, certainly the The state's plan has been in the news a lot, and they are about half of our funding percentage at times. So we are in a strong position, but really the goal should be to bring it to full funding. And so that's what we've been trying to aggressively do in the last few years in budgets. Our contribution requirement as a result of the last study has dropped from 12.32% to 12.14%. That's combined for the city and the employees. When we have gains and losses, when we do actuarial studies, we smooth those gains and losses over 5 years. So that's why when we have a really strong year like we did last year, it doesn't necessarily take a big leap forward because it's going to get smooth and you only get about 20% of that gain. So we do not have benefit increases built into this plan, which is a good thing. One of the reasons why
Hold on
this
1 second. Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Jim, just real quickly, that the decrease, or the whatever, it is a decrease, but the 12.14%, that's an individual contribution?
No, that's the overall contribution requirement for the plan. So when the actual study looks at it and says how much contributions need to be made as a percentage of overall compensation, it measures it as 12.14% of the total projected payroll. So, and I will get in the next slide here, I'll be showing you the breakout of that between employee and city.
Thank you.
So, or the slide after
Jim,
this one.
one more. Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
So there are no cost of living increases built into this plan. So we have had increases in the past when the plan was fully funded. There are ad hoc increases where we bring them forward based on affordability, based on the full funding of the plan. So at this point, we're not able to do that unless it gets to full funding, and there probably hasn't been an increase in this plan in about 10 years. So the proposed budget includes no change in the city contribution requirement of 7.7% and the employee contribution requirement of 5.8%. So combined, that's 13.5% versus the 12.14%, which is actuarially required to amortize that liability over the remaining 27 years. So again, we're leaving it at this level, and we've been over the requirement here in the last couple of years purposely to try to get this thing towards full funding status. It's not going to happen overnight unless we have really, really significant investment gains. Any further questions on pension plans?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I have a number of questions just to help me understand our retirement program. What is the vesting period? Is it 5 years?
Yes,
To
it
be
is.
fully vested? Okay. Do employees have the ability to buy years?
No, they do not.
Okay, that's good. I mean, because it doesn't. Well.
I agree with you.
Is there a percentage of how much you get based upon how many years you are?
Yes, it's
Like para?
each
has-
year accredited service is worth 2.2%.
Okay, okay. So what is the maximum monthly you can receive?
I think the maximum monthly is set by federal law, and I don't know that off the top of my head, but nobody's near it. So now, otherwise, it's driven by, there's no limit within the plan as far as how many years of accredited service you can accumulate.
So it doesn't max out at, say, 25 years?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Better not, because otherwise,
Well, okay.
Do I have a
missed
motion?
the boat a while ago.
And so, all right, when is the earliest somebody can retire and still get a fully, how many years can you retire and still get fully funding?
A full benefit, an employee who has the rule of 80 can do that at age 55, which would be a
Okay.
combination of the age and the years of service need
Yeah.
to add up to 80. Now that has been changed about 5 years ago
Yeah,
to a minimum of age 60 for
Yeah.
new employees enter into the system as of 5 years ago or so.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
most employees now that are, you heard a number about how much are eligible for retirement. The rule of 80 is based on minimum age 55. Now, if you don't meet the rule of 80, you can still go out at 55, but there's a 3% per year reduction for each year under age 65.
Okay, okay. All right. I guess that's all I have to ask.
Okay. All right, so we're going to shift then into the capital programs tonight. I'm going to just start with an overview of the Public Improvement Fund real quickly. And looking at it from the 5-year status, but I wanted to just give you an idea of what we did this year with the Public Improvement Fund. We, as we do with the general fund, since this is funded through sales and use tax, we certainly have challenges from year to year in being able to meet the needs that are funded out of this fund. It is basically the capital improvement projects that are for the funds like the general fund and other funds that do not have a source of revenue for like a fee for service that would be able to pay for capital projects. So the sales tax that we're budgeting for 2019 for this fund is $6.44 million. It's really the main source of revenue for this fund. As we've mentioned before, there's a bond issue that's paying off in May that we have worked into 11 CIP projects for infrastructure repair and replacement. Those are all on ballot. If those ballot questions pass, then we will amend the budget to add those projects into the fund, into the 2019 budget. But they're currently shown on the CIP fund statement, which is attachment B in your packet tonight. They're shown as unfunded projects currently. So the Public Improvement Fund, year in, year out, we do have a number of projects that we will fund and allocate dollars towards to maintain the infrastructure in the city. These are some of the annual projects: roof improvements, ADA improvements, boiler replacements, HVAC replacements, parking lot rehabilitation, flooring replacement. All of these you will see in all 5 years of the CIP, a certain amount of dollars at least allocated towards them. We also then have improvements in our fire stations. These are minor improvements as compared to the ones that we're putting on the ballot. The UPS repair and replacement. We have swimming and wading pool maintenance, sports, recreation, infrastructure, rehab and replacement. Those are within our park systems. Irrigation, pump systems rehab, and municipal buildings exterior and interior maintenance. And then other annual projects that we have in the Public Improvement Fund from year in, year out. We have $50,000 that we allocate to the Neighborhood Improvement Program. And then we also allocate dollars for replacement of equipment within our community service facilities, like our rec center and such. And then our debt payments. So we have a bond payment that's budgeted in there, one final payment at $2.7 million or so in 2018. And then we have put a slotted in a payment on a potential bond if all three were to pass. All three questions were to pass, about $2.54 million beginning in 2020 on a bond that we would issue next year. And then finally, we have a radio loan that is a loan from the Fleet Services Fund from a couple of years ago to replace radios throughout the organization and in public safety. And we were paying that over 3 years from the Public Improvement Fund. And now we have some projects that you're just seeing there, one-off projects here in 2019. You're going to hear about some of these tonight. The Council Chambers remodel, Sunset Campus expansion, the Park Ponds dredging and stabilization, the Park Bridge replacement, Pollinated Gardens, and then the First and Main Transit Station area improvements.
Councilmember Morton?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm following along on the fund statement here with these slides. And we're getting kind of far away from a basic question I had about the beginning, which is that we start 2019 with a deficit of $250,000. What's the deal with that?
So there is a footnote that you'll find at the bottom of the page, but you can't read it unless you've got reading glasses, right? So, no. But, so this is, from a budget perspective, we're showing a deficit. We don't expect to actually end the year in a deficit. But in the Public Improvement Fund, when we adopt a budget, the budget never lapses. And so we did adopt a $800,000 budget for the public safety radio replacement loans payment in 2018. And in fact, we only going to be paying $400,000. We actually didn't make the full amount of loans that we had planned to make, so we didn't need to make that full $800,000 payment this year. So what that means is the $400,000 that we will not be spending will flow through this pro forma. But we're trying to show you the budgeted beginning working capital. We kind of stressed over how best to do this, but we had to show that deficit for it in order to make that work. So. Further questions?
Did that answer it?
Councilmember Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Jim, it'll help me to know, you mentioned that there will be specifics on some of these. So just give me an idea how it's going to unfold for the rest of the evening, so I'll know when to ask, so I don't start asking questions now that are going to be answered in some part of the presentation later.
So we're going to, as soon as I'm finished here with a slide or two, I think we're going to introduce this overview of the CIP and then have a number of projects highlighted for you tonight. So I think I would wait for that project, and if at the end of the night you haven't heard that project, because we're not covering them all, then please go ahead and ask us
Then
that
we'll
question.
jump in. So, Councilmember Martin, I want to make sure we answer your question. So, there was a projected, if you look at the footnote, there was a projected $800,000. I'm trying to read the.
So $800,000 loan repayment to the fleet fund for the public safety radio replacement project. But we will actually only be paying $400,000. So that will actually make the ending working capital a positive balance because that $400,000 will not be spent. But what we're showing you is a budgeted number, and that's why it's a negative number to start 2019, which I wish we hadn't done. But harder to explain than to
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm not sure this is the proper time to ask this either, but at the end of, well, page 4 of this part, it says the, let me see, the retirement of the bond that funded the Quail Campus and the Roosevelt Park project pays off in May 2019. And what was the amount of that bond originally? Do you remember?
Mayor Bagley, I'd rather not speculate and take a
Okay.
guess. So
I was just wondering if it was close to the bonding of the three issues for $32.8 million. I'm wondering how much bonding we're getting into if everything passes.
So they should have both been 20-year bonds. So they're pretty close in size, is my guess. It depends on the interest rates back then versus now. But
Yeah.
I can get you the answer to that question. But off the top of my head, I'd rather not throw a number out.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I would like to know. I'm concerned about how much we're bonding out, and that's all.
Okay, so the final slide here, there's a couple of other revenues that I wanted to highlight that are coming into the Public Improvement Fund this year. And they get kind of tie back to some of the comments we made last week when we presented the budget. And we talked about some of the one-time revenues in the general fund that were giving us opportunities to do some things. As I mentioned, we typically will spend our project dollars out of the public improvement fund and not the general fund. So we have budgeted some transfers from the general fund to the public improvement fund, where these projects would be typically budgeted from. $400,000 going to the First and Main Transit Station area improvements, and that project is already partially funded within the public improvement fund, as well as partially unfunded. You'll see on the last page of the CIP. General fund transfer of $97,000 for Union Reservoir Bridge replacement. We're using revenue from fees from Union Reservoir for that purpose. We have a CIP project that is replacing 2 other bridges within the public improvement fund, so we're just transferring this $97,000 towards that project, which is about $255,000, about 80% of the way down the page on the fund statement for the public improvement fund. And finally, we had some incremental development revenue that we are trying to make sure that whenever we are budgeting for the use of incremental development revenue, we want to make sure it's somewhat tied to development-related expenses. We paid for part of the remodeling of the Development Services Center when it was first remodeled good 10 years ago or so out of the Public Improvement Fund. So we were reimbursing the Public Improvement Fund for the tax dollars that were used for that purpose, and instead using incremental development revenues by transferring that in here. So that's not going towards any special project here. It's just contributing to the overall balance in there. So I think that's the last, there's one other slide here. So we have projects that we did have to defer out into the later years that were requested, and there are some as well that are shown as unfunded, like our municipal buildings flooring replacement. We weren't able to fully fund that at the requests that were made. That's part of the cuts that we've made in the Public Improvement Fund to try to balance it over the last year or two. We do have funding capacity. You can tell at the bottom line of 2022 and 23, it's about $2.3 million at the end of the 5 years. We're not allocating the last couple of years and the last couple of $1 million at this point in time. We think it's best to wait to see what the result of the elections on these 3 bond issues are, and then make a decision on how to address that. Maybe we may need to use those monies in case we have to cash fund some projects. So we do have dollars, we do have needs that we can meet with those dollars, but they're not till years 4 and 5 anyway. And so at this point in time, we don't have recommendations about the use of those monies. I did note here, though, that there are about 18 unfunded CIP projects listed on page S8. A couple of them pretty significant. The Aquatics Recreation Center you talked about last week are on there. Something of that magnitude would only be able to be funded through a bond. First and Main Transit Station area improvements. It's got a large amount in here, but that is also inclusive of funding from RTD of about $17 million. So we are narrowing the gap on that project, but not fully just yet. And then the other large one is the Safety and Justice Remodel Expansion, which could take another bond issue, or it might take, depending on how our public safety fund is turning out on its revenues, to be able to maybe take care of some of the expenses through the public safety tax, but not likely to be able to handle 21 million. So most of those other projects, though, they probably will be able to fit into future CIPs. Question on any of that information?
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So on these unfunded projects, are these 18 projects everything? Because you had said you're not showing us everything tonight, so is this everything on the?
No, this is
the list?
everything. This is the whole list of unfunded projects. I think what I meant was that we will be presenting tonight on a number of projects throughout the CIP, not just from the Public Improvement Fund, but not all of the projects. We won't make presentations on them all, but the information is included here and as well throughout the CIP.
So what I personally would like to see, and of course it's up to council, is that we have quiet zones on this project, either unfunded, and for those quiet zones to be, I know that doing the full city is like $7 million, but individual quiet zones, if we need to figure out how we're going to fund those and when we're going to do it. So I would like to see on the total unfunded projects, the total amount of doing the whole city in quiet zones. But then perhaps if we can work into the funded projects, the cost of doing one or two, so that we have it figured out, and in 5 years we have them all done. Or that because if we keep pushing that away, we just need to address it. And it has to be addressed through the budget, unless we do get some grants, but that road, we've gone down that road. So,
So Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Peck, I just want to point out, so all I'm showing you here is the Public Improvement Fund. So there are a number of other funds that are also a part of the CIP, and that includes the street fund, which is where we do show the quiet zones projects. And so, and we will be talking about that in 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, they're going to touch on it tonight, but then where we have the real conversation is actually going to be on the 18th.
Yeah.
On the 18th, because they're going to present some options to council. As I indicated in some earlier conversations regarding this budget, the street fund is also challenged, and so there will have to be some decisions made in terms of what we fund and what we don't fund and how we can allocate that piece. But we've definitely heard that from council, and that's going to be part of the conversation on the 18th. They'll touch on it tonight.
Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just to clarify, in the CIP projects listed here, there is a reference to, there's a $30,000 line for quiet zones. And then if I go to the budget message, if I go to the CIP budget, in the narrative for the improvements at First and Main, that $400,000. The description looks to me like a crossing at Emory, right? A train crossing. So I'm confused about why we would have, maybe we don't, so help me understand. The First and Main station and area improvements, if that's not a crossing, then I misunderstood the narrative. But why would we see, if that is, why would we see then that $30,000 for, this is one of the questions I was going to ask earlier, that $30,000 for quiet zones in the capital improvement budget?
I'm trying to find the...
I'll switch over here to go to I got to get out of this file to find my way back into the packet that we got. Thanks. With the budget message and that narrative.
So, Mayor Bagley, that's not coming to mind just yet. I'll look through that message. I don't know about a $30,000 reference to the quiet zones. It isn't. I know. I see looking through the public improvement fund and the street fund. It's not listed as a funded project that I'm aware of, but we will try to identify the 30,000 you're talking about. Now the 400,000 is for the First and Main project. The transit station area improvements were for the whole. And I'm not. Sean, if you want to take a shot.
There's a slide.
Are we talking about that later tonight?
There's a
We
slide
will
in
be
there.
talking about that later tonight, though. So I'll let someone else address that one.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I believe that money may be that we made a match with the project down at First and Main that is the Main Street station with the,
Right.
it's very confusing. But he's going to give us 50%, and we're coming up with 50% for that one quiet zone. Is that, could that be what
Oh,
it
no,
is?
that's-
No?
That is the first in Emory project in
Right.
terms of the agreements with the developer for 150
Right.
Main, where they put in 900,000 and the city put in 900,000
Okay. so that's
for
not-
the repairs of that intersection.
Oh, just
Or
the
not the
repairs.
repairs, not the repairs, actually the restructuring of the intersection. That starts
That's
setting the
right.
stage as one of those pieces. I think it does encompass what you need.
But
and-
it's,
But I believe that was part of the 2018 budget.
yeah, but it's still not a quiet zone. It's just I remember that big discussion of whether there was going to be an overpass, and, you know, that all.
Mayor
So-
Bagley and Councilmember Christensen, you're really close. You've almost got everything right. Jim is correct. The first in Emory project was in a previous CIP, so you're not seeing it in 2019. It is a project that we are doing in partnership with the First and Main, or Main Street Station project, where we are essentially splitting the costs of that particular crossing. It does include the hardware and the necessary infrastructure for it to be a quiet zone.
Okay.
It also includes the traffic light. So it's a very expensive crossing because of the traffic light and the railroad going together. And that project is gone through the PUC process. We got approval there. The thing we were just fighting on was to get a trail crossing because our regional trail comes
yeah,
through that
that's
area.
right.
So it's a project that's very close to being finished with the design and should be going to construction next year.
Oh, okay, good.
So even though it has the equipment to serve as a quiet zone, it still can't serve as a quiet zone because you need, Sean, the quarter mile. Sean or Dale, you need a quarter mile. So you need to have you need to have Main Street crossing done and all of the others in order so it can fully function, but it will have the hardware to serve that purpose.
So do we have to have all of them done at the same time?
No, you can
Okay.
incrementally move in there.
Okay.
It just doesn't mean when you work on an intersection that it can immediately become quiet.
Okay.
Because you do need to have that quarter mile section within quiet zones in terms
Okay.
of the,
Yeah, it's very complicated.
And Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Christensen, without it being a spoiler, on September 18th, we want to talk with you in far greater detail on quiet zones. Many of you will remember we did a study. We identified the cost to do each of the crossings and the complexities, and it varies greatly by crossing. Harold is correct. You need to have a certain distance if you expect them to not hit the horn. And so we're going to talk with you about all of that. It comes into play on where you start and how you progress through the program and the project. So lots of issues, but without further delay tonight. So
Dale, why even show up on the 18th now? You spoiled it.
this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Can we just cancel the meeting?
It's so much better.
Yeah,
There's so
okay.
much more.
Okay, good. Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. This may be, I may just be beating not a dead horse. That wouldn't be the right metaphor. I may just be stretching this further than I should, but on page 154 of the budget message, there is the write-up. I guess this is in the CIP budget. The description of the crossing in Emory behind being included in Project T-127, First and Emory intersection improvements, and those are the things that Dale was talking about. So this is the way it reads to me. This is the language. The cost for the T-127 project are being split 50-50 between the developer and the city. So I'm going to assume that whatever we're doing there, the developer of that site has put up money and we're putting up money. For the residents along the rail line who have been asking for crossings, what have they put up in dollars, in sales tax, use tax, over the last decade? And that's a hypothetical question because you can't answer it.
Right.
But when this is written like it's the city's putting up the city's money against the developer money, I want to say back up and say, wait a minute. All those people who live along the rail line, that's their money that we're putting up against or matching the developer's money. And I respect, money talks. And if the developer, we expect developers to bring cash to the kind of infrastructure that is required to advance their projects, and I'm glad that's happening in this case. But I'm just on record now, as we move this forward, and I'm going to be anxious to get into that conversation with the street fund. I'm going to be curious to know what the residents along the rail line have put up to finance the cost of crossings in their neighborhoods, just like this developer put up money to finance the cost of a crossing in his neighborhood, right? Because we owed that to them as much as we do to the developer.
Councilmember Finley. So chatty tonight. Never mind? All right. All right. Do you want to go on to the proposed
Yes,
CIP?
I'm going to turn it over to Teresa here.
All right. So my guess is she's learned. I'm guessing 4 slides max. Watch.
You
Everybody
cheated.
take note.
Okay, good evening, council and mayor. I'm Teresa Malloy, budget manager. So slide 1 of 4. So this is the overview of our 2019 to 2023 CIP. And you will see that we've got $217.7 million total over those 5 years that we're proposing for funding. This is only reflecting those funded projects, so not unfunded at this point. In our 2018 to 2022 CIP, we had $218.6 million. So just about $1 million less than what we have in our 2018 to 2022 5-year CIP. You'll also notice that the water category is the largest category over those 5 years, and that is really being driven mainly by one project, and that's Windy Gap. So there's $41.2 million proposed as funded in 2019 for Windy Gap. And so this is just another look at our 5-year CIP. For the 5 years. Again, 2019 is being driven by Windy Gap. And then in 2019 alone, we've got $87.9 million proposed as funded. And that compares to $60.3 million for 2018. So the big one here again is Windy Gap. We have 3 staff members who will be up here to talk to you about specific projects. But I do want to point out that we've got a lot more staff members in the audience. If you have any additional detailed questions that you have on any of the projects you hear about this evening, or any of the projects that we don't talk about, please let us know, and we will get someone to answer those questions for you. So we're going to actually start off with LPC and Brian McGill, and then we're going to move into Sandy Cedar, and she's got one project she's going to update you on. And then Jim Engstad will come up from PW&R, and he's going to spend the rest of the evening up here with you because he's got several projects he wants to talk to you about.
So LPC, and who's next?
And then Sandy,
Sandy.
and then Jim Engstad.
What's Sandy going to touch on? Oh, can't wait. Awesome. All right, cool.
Okay.
So Tom, looks like you escaped it. You're not even presenting tonight. You're just here. Just all right, good. I feel comfortable though. Makes me feel safe and warm.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of council.
And are we okay? Do you want to take a 5-minute break before we go on to this? Let's take 5. Okay. I mean, it's riveting information, the math. But it's been an hour and a half. I want some donuts or something.
Test, test.
All right, let's go ahead and get going.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Bagley, members of council. My name is Brian McGill, and I'm one of the utility rate analysts with Longmont Power and Communications. I'm here to give you a general overview of LPC's CIP projects in 3 slides. LPC consists of the electric utility, the broadband utility, better known as Nextlight, and the Electric Community Investment Fee Fund. Right into it? Okay. We generally have a standard set of CIP projects that include items such as extending the electric and broadband systems to meet the demands of new development, improvements to our electric system to increase reliability, and upgrades and expansions to our electric substation facilities. So here's a list of LPC's 2019 electric projects, which are funded by electric utility revenues and the Electric Community Investment Fee Fund. Our 2 largest projects, aid to construction and electric system capacity increases, are both developer-driven. And as Harold and Jim noted in the budget message that was presented last week, Longmont is currently experiencing very strong construction activity. The aid to construction project is to extend electric infrastructure to new developments. LPC's electric line crews perform the vast majority of this infrastructure installation, and our costs are simply then passed through to the developers. The philosophy of development paying its own way is a contributing factor to keeping our electric rates low, because we're not asking our ratepayers to fund the infrastructure associated with new development. And I'm proud to say that we currently have the 2nd lowest electric residential rates in the state of Colorado out of 58 electric utilities. Tied to this work is the electric system capacity increases. These are our main feeder lines for the electric system. These are looped and switched to provide high reliability and are customized for the growth as projects begin the planning process. This project is funded out of the Electric Community Investment Fee Fund, which is another way developer pays its own way. These fees are generally collected through the permitting process and is charged on all new electric services as well as upgrades to existing services. These funds can only be used to fund growth-related capital improvement projects such as the main feeder improvements and substation improvements. Which leads us into the next project, electric substation expansion. We have included $200,000 in the 2019 budget to purchase substation equipment such as switchgear associated with the installation of the new transformer at the county line substation, which is included in this year's budget. A number of our other CIP projects assist with maintaining the extremely high reliability of our electric system. The Electric Reliability Improvement Project includes items like animal protection devices to keep squirrels and birds away from our transformers and electric lines, as well as fault indicators and switching equipment. The Electric Substation Upgrades Project is for the continued replacement of non-microprocessing equipment and legacy remote terminal unit equipment, which also contributes to improved reliability. The Electric Feeder Underground Conversion Project's funding is used to convert main feeder overhead lines to underground. LPC's distribution system is currently 77% underground. Undergrounding overhead lines is a costly process, and the overhead lines that produce the greatest reliability improvements in the most cost-effective manner have already been undergrounded. Therefore, we now evaluate the undergrounding projects in conjunction with other city projects to identify those that provide the greatest cost-to-benefit ratios. The street lighting program project is used to provide regular street lighting in neighborhoods where there currently is none. Over 100 years ago, when the Longmont first formed its own electric utility, one of the benefits provided to the community was an unmetered porch light for all residents. And there are still areas in the city that have these free porch lights today. If the neighborhoods decide to convert their free porch lights to street lighting, then the expenses are covered by this project. The advanced metering project is budgeted at $10,000 per year from 2019 through 2021 to allow us to continue researching advanced metering technology. This timeframe will allow for the implementation of the city's new customer information and billing system, and for us to determine how to best leverage our citywide fiber system to utilize this technology to its highest potential. Okay, so to wrap up LPC's portion of tonight's presentation, I'd like to spend a few minutes to give you a next light update. I'm happy to report that we currently have 18,400 customers and counting. Citizens are so pleased with our service that we continue to receive a ranking of 9+ out of 10 on our post-installation satisfaction surveys. Since our project began in 2014, we have installed over 700 miles of fiber throughout the city. And there are 2 CIP projects for Nextlight included in the 2019 budget. The first is the Aid to Construction project. If an installation is beyond the standard cost criteria, or if a customer wants custom materials or a specialized design, then those customers are billed for the actual costs of labor, equipment, and materials to construct their desired service beyond the standard cost. And LPC's final CIP project is the Broadband Fiber Construction and Installation Project. Funds for this project will be used for multi-dwelling units, single-family homes, construction development, and areas in the city where redevelopment is occurring. And these project funds will cover both the outside plant construction and the installation costs associated with that. And that is all I have for LPC. And I think Sandy is up next.
Oh, not yet. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Brian,
Stand firm.
Okay.
Just listen and answer.
This is an easy answer. So I have heard from residents who are living in a property managed development that they don't have broadband because their property management has already contracted with Comcast or some other company. So my question is, because those residents actually need to be looped into this system as well, how are we following up with those contracts through Comcast to know when they end so that we can bulldoze our way in and put in Nextlight for those residents instead of having them up their contracts with another company?
Well, so you definitely are correct. We do have to sign an access agreement to get into those multi-dwelling units before we can actually go in and start providing services.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
So, as we've talked to our legal counsel representing this, you can't have an exclusive agreement to provide services. You can have an exclusive agreement for marketing. And so they're not necessarily one and the same. And so what happens is that in order to go on someone's property, they have to sign an access agreement. And that's fundamentally what we're challenged with. And what we do is we keep pinging and pinging and pinging. In some cases, we say you really need to talk to the owners of your property in order to allow us access to that property. But it's not an exclusive service contract. Typically, they're exclusive marketing contracts. Well, that's what it has to be. And if they can get us the information, then we do follow up on that. We had an issue with Councilmember Martin where we actually went through that with a multifamily development.
We are on the edge of our seat, Sandy.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, City Manager's Office. I'm here to update you on the council chambers remodel. Just when you thought we were done remodeling this room, we're not even close. So this room has been designated as one of the highest needs in order to have ADA remodeling. Essentially, this ramp is not today's standard for ramp to bring in for ADA compliance. And so since we're going to essentially scrape the room anyway in order to do that kind of work, in order to make it more accessible for our entire community, we figured at the same time we would also replace the seating as well as the dais, these desks, lighting, and ceiling improvements. So that will displace the council for several months next year. We are working on design right now, and we'll let you know more about timing when we know about timing.
Mayor Pro Tem.
We just replaced these chairs about 2 years ago, so we really don't need to replace the chairs.
The chairs are not part of the
All
budget.
right.
Yeah, correct.
Neither are the microphones. The microphones.
I'd be happy to work
And all the
on
AV
painting.
equipment
Okay.
continues to stay where it is. It's
Yeah.
everything else that's going to go as part of this project.
Okay.
So, with that,
So,
I'll-
and to talk a little bit about ADA, you also see the curb ramps that we're doing. And so, I want to say about 3 years ago, we went through a complete evaluation, ADA evaluation 3 or 4 years ago, in terms of understanding what the ADA issues were existed within all of our properties, whether that be parks, facilities. And so as part of the law, as it really goes, a lot of times we get a question of why are you building all of these ramps on intersections? It's because there is law that basically says we have to make reasonable progress in terms of satisfying our ADA requirements in our community. And so that's when we make those annual allocations, whether it be for the curb ramps or even in this facility. And we've identified those locations based on need and priority.
Mayor Bagley and members of council, Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. Jim Angstead is going to do the bulk of the presentation tonight. He's our Director of Engineering Services, and he's just been dying to have his time in front of the council. So I do want to start out just real quickly, though, with a little bit of an overview. So in PW&R, we have over 50 projects in next year's CIP. That doesn't count all the projects that we're still working on this year that are going to likely, many of them, carry into next year. And so it's a massive program. Jim's going to talk about that a little bit. The key focus of what we're doing in PW&R, though, is focused on asset management. That is the driver for many of the systems that we're operating that were built 10, 50, 100 years ago. They all need a lot of care and attention every year in order to keep them maintained. The systems that we're working on are valued at hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And so even though the budgets look big, they're relatively small compared to the overall value of the system. So imagine if it was your house and how much money you spend on a new roof or a new part of your home. It's similar to that. The other thing that I think it's important is that the CIP that we prepare every year is not driven by me sitting in the chair or the last call from a citizen that says we need to do something. Instead, they are driven by comprehensive master plans that are done in every one of these areas. And so we have done master planning in water, in sewer, in storm, in streets. Those are really the in-depth documents that guide the generation of the CIP. That doesn't mean, though, that it's all cast in stone, right? That we still have to have flexibility to deal with changes in our community, changes in expectations of our customers, and so on. But what I want to make known, though, is that these are long-term efforts. The master planning starts many years ahead of something actually coming into the capital program. And it's all based on either a renewal of a particular asset that's needed to occur, hopefully before failure, before something fails. We want to be just like the day ahead of that kind of thing. And it deals with system expansions. And so we're going to talk to you about some of both of those kinds of different projects tonight, and Jim's going to go through several. But trust me, we're not going to talk to you about all 50. But we do have a whole bunch of staff here to answer questions that you may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Welcome, Nick Wolfram 2.0.
Thank you, Dale. Mayor Bagley, members of council, I am Jim Angstadt. I'm the Director of Engineering Services for the Public Works and Natural Resources Department. Tonight we are going to go over some proposed capital improvement program projects. While I was putting this together, I had an opportunity to ask my daughter, what could I do to make this better? And she said, chocolate, Daddy, give him chocolate. So we passed around a bag of chocolate, so hopefully if that doesn't make it better, it will at least, when you leave, you can have a sweet taste in your mouth.
By the way, the chocolate's gone. Dale,
Thank you.
excellent presentation. Just kidding. We got more.
A quick overview. We're breaking the projects down into basically 6 areas. Drainage, our public buildings and facilities, parks and rec, open space, sewer, wastewater, water, and transportation. We will be covering some of those, highlighting some of those major projects. Not all of them, as Dale indicated. We're certainly open to any questions. We are putting forth a total of over $79 million worth of projects. Of course, that's half of that is one project, Windy Gap. One of the first things I learned in engineering school is water flows downhill. And it is extremely important. We're going to put about almost $9 million worth of dollars into some of our major projects next year. Highlighting those are the storm drainage rehab and improvements, which is asset management. That's going to be a echoing theme tonight. Asset management is extremely important. Look at it like you just bought a car. Okay, you will be changing the oil in that car. You will be washing it. Everybody likes to think about the, woohoo, I got a new car. Well, you don't always go, I had to wash it and wax it. But you do need to take care of what you put together, what you build, our assets. It is extremely important that we maintain them. Spring Gulch number 2, and then also I want to just touch base on the Resilient St. Vrain project. So drainage rehab, in a graphic that is a little bit hard to read. This focus is on basically our drainage pipe system. What you see in red there is areas that, and the colors reflect our video inspection that we've been undertaking for the last several years. We've got about 20% of the city inspected. A total, in the city, you have about 196 miles of drainage conveyance system. That includes our pipe system, about 123 miles. The rest is comprised of open ditches and some concrete line ditches. But you need to, basically our focus is to maintain them. We put forth a certain amount of money each year to basically replace what you see kind of highlighted in red. And it is ongoing every year to make sure that when it rains, the water gets off the road, flows through the system. Spring Gulch number 2, drainage and greenway improvements. Quick update, the design is nearly complete. Permitting is complete. We're looking to start bid advertising in the fall of this year with construction next year. Project involves trail improvements, which is pretty much what you see highlighted in purple. Crossing county line will be an underpass. We're doing some sidewalk improvements on County Line Road. It'll eventually tie down, the project extends from Stephen Day Park down to Weld County Road 26. In future years, it will extend down from Route 26 down to State Highway 119 and connect into the improvements, which was phase 1, which there's an underpass that'll get you under to Sandstone Ranch. Resilient St. Vrain. This was updated for you a week ago, kind of following with the same information as an update. But I also want to advise you, we recently were awarded a APWA, American Public Works Association award from the state of Colorado for Sandstone Ranch and City Reach 1 for sustainability. Shifting over to the public buildings, Jim touched on this a little earlier this evening. The bulk of the work is focused on maintenance and rehab of existing buildings. The major projects include some of the roof improvements and HVAC improvements. We are going to be working on the roofs at the rec center, Sunset Pool Shed, Sunset Golf Clubhouse, as well as Twin Peaks Clubhouse.
Okay, so I taught for 4 years up at the University of Colorado's Lead School of Business. This is an A presentation, meaning that as you're going along, meaning that you're not reading all the slides for us. It's going really quick. I'm just saying that I was going to wait till the end, but it's like you were rocking this. So I just thought it would be as the chair of this meeting, I just wanted to point this out now, since we have a bunch of staff in the audience. This is how this is done. Continue.
Okay. Oh, now you got in my head. No
Yeah,
pressure.
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
HVAC improvements, the museum, rec center, and public works maintenance facility. Again, you need to put money into your existing facilities, make them last longer, push off those replacement costs. So as we move through, we also are working on expanding our park system and our open space and our trails. So another almost $5 million worth of projects. The major ones include the St. Vrain Greenway, Union Reservoir, Fox Meadows Neighborhood Park, as well as again, asset management, park infrastructure rehab projects. Moving over to the St. Vrain Greenway, we've got 2 phases. Phase 12, which is Golden Ponds to Airport Road. Design will be undertaken this year. Construction following in 2019 to 2020. We are coordinating with Boulder County for the section from Airport Road to the west. Another phase is over on the other side of the city, in the eastern side, is also St. Vrain Greenway, extending from Sandstone Ranch to the St. Vrain State Park. We are working on design for next year, is targeted, with construction to follow in 2021. We'll require coordinating with CDOT.
Well, excuse me, where's the pedestrian bridge at Sandstone? Meaning that trail, and if I'm standing on that pedestrian bridge at Sandstone, is that on here?
I'm going to bring Dale in.
Okay, I'm just curious where the trail's going to go.
Mayor Bagley and members of council, this doesn't show where it is, but
It's off to the left?
It is off to the left. So my bearings, this is the edge of Sandstone Park here. Excuse me,
Right.
this is the edge of Sandstone Park, where we're putting it in the new traffic light. Down into there, so the bridge and the trail come around the historic house, come across what used to be the old channel, and then it's off over into the corner here.
Okay.
So
all
this
right.
trailhead is going to start near the parking lot at the upper end of Sandstone Ranch,
Okay.
so that folks can either walk or bike or drive to that point, and then head east or west, frankly. The big part of this project, as Jim was saying, is getting underneath State Highway 119, and that's not going to be an easy task. We know we can get under one of the bridges, but unfortunately there's 2, and we're going to have to do some coordination and work with CDOT to get enough clearance to get underneath that second bridge.
All right, thanks.
Well, yeah, the Herald is telling me, why don't we? So these 2 bridges were built for us old folks that have been here in Longmont for a long time. You'll remember that State Highway 119 was built in phases. And the older of the 2 bridges, which I believe is the westbound lanes, is older, and it's frankly at a lower elevation. If CDOT had all the money in the world, we would want them first to come out here and replace these bridges entirely so that they would pass a 100-year flood and not close down Highway 119, which is what happened in 2013. We all know that isn't the case right now. So again, our coordination is going to be trying to work with them with their own aging infrastructure to try to figure out a way to get the trail under there.
Some of the other challenges will be involving the topography. There's a landfill we're going to be crossing, as well as some of the wildlife in the area. So Union Reservoir, PRO 010, Union Reservoir Master Plan improvements. We'll be undertaking, as we move through the master plan development of the overall Union Reservoir project, we'll also be working on some of the trails. So design for the West Trail will begin in 2019 with construction to follow, and then following by the North and East Trail in 2020 and 2021. Fox Meadows Neighborhood Park. Designed to start in 2019. Existing on the park site itself now is city Went in and did some improvements for for the neighborhood kids. So there will be a full public process during the course of design to incorporate the neighborhood concerns and issues and wants within the design of that facility. Again, going to park infrastructure rehab and replacement, touching base on asset management. We have a series of projects that will involve some upgrades. The slide here shows kind of the quality of the park entry sign. We'll be replacing some of those items. And then the lower photo shows one of the projects after it's been improved. So we want to provide good quality infrastructure for not just roads, but our parks as well. So we want to dive right into the sewer and wastewater. We have about 1.6 million in total costs in our major projects. Sanitary sewer rehab improvements, which again, asset management. And then I want to provide a little more information on SWR 149, the wastewater treatment plant. So in our sanitary sewer system, there is about 340 miles of sewer line. About 21 miles of that is aging, about 70 years old. Now that doesn't mean that you have to automatically go in and replace pipe that's old. Dale will tell you that even though he's older, he's got a lot of useful life to him. So we don't want to replace Dale, but some sewer lines do need to be replaced. We do have a program in that when we identify them, we will go and replace. We usually do about 4,000 to 6,000 linear feet a year. We usually use a non-invasive construction method of lining pipe where we will cure that pipe liner in place so we don't have to dig up a street. So we can do that, get away with that with our sewer lines, some of our drainage replacements, not necessarily our water lines, and I'll touch base on that shortly. So some of the improvements at our wastewater treatment plant, we are going to be working on the scum pump. Some improvements there as well as our primary clarifier. I also want to touch base with you regarding our planning for Regulation 85. We were just issued by the state our permit for wastewater effluent release, and Reg 85 is a requirement. It is an unfunded mandate that requires local communities to meet requirements for reductions of nitrogen and phosphorus. So what that means for us is that we will need to be doing upgrades to the plant. Our original plan and our request through the state was we wanted to have 7 years to do it. The permit they just provided us, issued us, gives us about 5.5 years. So this is an item that we will be, we're currently working on the financial implications of that. So we will be bringing that back in the future with more information to bring you up to with current information. So while this necessarily isn't is in our current budget, I wanted to provide you an update on our methane reuse project. Just some background, it's to reuse the gas that's put off from the plant as a biofuel for our sanitation fleet. The project includes gas treatment, a fueling station, and a garage facility. So eventually we will be replacing our sanitation fleet with natural gas powered vehicles. Current cost is about $9,200,000. We did get funding through that with a DOLA grant, and then the rest of the funding is from the sanitation fund and wastewater treatment plant bonds. This project is a design build project. Currently it's about 60% design complete. We are working with the design builder to get our guaranteed maximum price with a project completion in late 2019. This project is the first one on the Front Range. It is in line with several of the guiding principles of Envision Longmont, namely safe, healthy, and adaptable community, as well as responsible stewardship of our resources. You will see this be coming back, I believe, next week for some additional appropriation for the funds.
Quick question. So at Platte River, we're always talking about it has to be reliable, it has to be affordable, and it also has to be environmentally responsible. So is this following the same, is this all three of those things as well? Meaning, yeah, is this all three of those things as well?
The really smart guys next to me are not.
Dale just
yes.
said yes. All right, great. That's
And Mayor, you actually bring up a good point. The methane project was one that we did extensive work to try to figure out the best way to reuse the methane that's being generated. Everything from cogen to heating areas around the plant to piping it over to an industrial company. This was the optimum project to use it on. It has an ROI of 9 to 10 years. It meets all of the SES, Sustainability Evaluation System criteria. And so, yes, this was one of those projects that we think really sort of benefited from that kind of an analysis. So, okay, cool. Good point.
All right, we're done with wastewater and sewer, so we want to go clean up with some water. What we have here is about $47 million in major projects in our water and water distribution. Big ticket item, of course, is Windy Gap, and then we have some of our others, which we will start touching on now. Again, asset management, water distribution, rehab, and improvements. Asset management, keep saying that, 456 miles of water line in the city. You usually get about 50 to 100 years useful life out of a pipe system. We replace about 5,000 to 6,000 feet of pipe each year. We actually are going into construction for this year's sections. We'll be under construction by September of this year. Windy Gap. I've noted the completed items, moving through the process. Some of the ongoing items, final design is nearing completion. Some of the financial activities into next year for the bonding. There is a legal challenge, a couple of legal challenges out there. Schedule is to resolve those 2019 through 2021, and then bidding and construction to follow. I was advised there were some questions regarding the financing. I have Becky Doyle waiting in the wings. I can bring her up. She can certainly deal with that a little better than I can.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of council. I just wanted to address a couple of financing issues on the Windy Gap firming project. You may have been surprised to see that bonding is part of the financial plan at this time, because the last we spoke about this project, we were avoiding immediate rate increases and cash funding the project to the tune of 8,000 acre feet of participation, which was a reduction from the 10,000 acre foot level that we were at. A few things have changed since then, including significant cost increases as we've gone through the design process to the tune of about a 30% rate increase, which unfortunately overshadows that 20% volume reduction. And the other sort of large outstanding issue is that legal challenge that leaves in question when exactly construction will commence. So the other thing I want to say about the financing picture is that we're looking at sort of the entire capital program on an ongoing basis. So this is obviously a very large project. We're also balancing with this with a large project Jim will talk about in a moment, which is improvements at the Nelson Flanders treatment plant. And those are roughly of the same magnitude. And an important thing to know is, as we're looking at this large capital program, we will be doing some bonding, whether it's for this project or for the treatment plant. We have the bonding authority for this project now, and so we have included as an option, in the 2019 budget, that if we go to construction, that we may choose to use the bonding authority for this project if that's the most fiscally responsible thing to do. Knowing that, we're trading off cash financing one large project and bond financing another. So, questions on that?
Councilmember Waters.
Well, thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was surprised when I saw the budget materials and saw the increase for just in the water fund, and this in particular, because I was sitting up there as you all were dealing with issues of the Chimney Hollows project, and as I saw the council kind of wrestling with how much to firm. But having sat up there, I didn't have access to all the information and just trying to connect the dots as one observes from sitting in the audience. But my recollection was, and I'm not trying to nail anybody with this. I just want to make certain I remembered it properly, and I understand how it's moving forward and what the implications are. It was my recollection as an observer that the decision to put a bond question on the ballot was really tied to the decision of a council to firm 10,000 or to reserve or store 10,000 acre feet. That I thought I saw three financing options, one of which was a bond for, as I recall, it was 32, maybe it was $36 million. Mm-hmm. What was it for?
36.
$36 million that was tied to the decision to firm 10,000 acre feet, with two other options for 8,000 and 6,000. Mm-hmm. So I get costs to go up, but as I sat up there and observed it, it appeared to me as though had that council decided to firm 6,000 acre feet, there never would have been a bond question.
That's correct.
Correct.
And at this point, all the fact that we have the bonding authority just means that we have greater options moving forward. And in fact, it may be advantageous for us to go to the bond market sooner with this project,
I get that, in terms of
rather
interest
than
rates.
waiting
Yeah.
until later.
Let me just keep running with it though.
Sure.
Because the reason I think, and I remember the language in the bond question gave permission to sell up to $36 million, and there was specific language to other infrastructure projects as well. It wasn't just for the Chimney Hollows project.
Right.
So I get that. I mean, it was right out there for the public. But the reason we're now selling bonds is the cost of that project has inflated from original estimate by 30%. Correct?
I wouldn't say that's the only reason that we're selling bonds. The other reason is just the size of the capital program generally.
So
There will be some debt.
Staying with Chimney Hollows,
Yeah.
it was it was a $440 million project.
Mm-hmm.
That's now estimated, before we're finished with design, at $575,000.
Yes.
So if the estimates are now 30% beyond what they were in 2016, do we have any idea what they might be by the time a lawsuit settled and construction would actually start, design work would be finished and construction would start? Is it going to be double that? Because my final question to that is, are we talking potentially about using that complete capacity in terms of bonding, and this council is going to be talking about going back to firming less than 8,000 acre feet? I mean, I just think that's something we ought to be talking about. I think the public ought to understand that given all the publicity and all the rhetoric and the angst around that 10,000 to 8,000, we may be talking about 6,000 and spending as much as we were going to spend on it for 10,000. Is that true?
It's definitely an option.
I think that it's fairly unlikely at this stage in design where we are that costs would as much as double. I don't know if Ken has an opinion on that, but we are at the point in final design where we should be very close. At this point, the greatest risk to the project in terms of cost is the delay from the lawsuit.
Sure. All the cost, labor and materials are skyrocketing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think when you look, I mean, so here's what hits me when I've seen projects like this. The two things that you want to watch is what's the price of concrete and steel.
Yeah.
Because those are the two components that can create significant cost
Well,
increases.
tariffs on steel aren't helping.
And so those are things we have to watch, because the reality is this has been a moving target, somewhat frustrating to us because we can't seem to grab a number and stick to it. It's different. I mean, we're not managing this.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to understand it, but this is going to be an ongoing conversation next year, because we're going to be watching all of these factors. And someone asked me the question, well, are you sure you're going to bond? Well, you also don't want to pull the trigger on bonding way too early when you can't spend the funds, because then you're paying interest on the debt. And so those are all pieces that we have to watch. Ken can talk a little bit about
Let me just, am I the only one that was a little surprised by this, or did you all have your deeper understanding of all this? Okay, it wasn't just me. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Becky, just at the very beginning of your talk, you said the words 30% rate increase. Were you really talking about 30% rate increase, or were you talking about the cost overrun?
I apologize. Yes, it was a cost increase of
Okay.
approximately 30%.
I think there are a lot of people who will listen to this later that would have jumped on the words 30% rate increase, so I wanted to make sure that didn't stand.
I want to respond to some of the things. I guess my question is, part of the reason why I'm glad, I wanted the 10,000 myself personally, and we're at 8, but if we don't, every acre foot of water we let go, there is a line right now to get their hands on it. The people at the front of the line, maybe not the front of the line, but people who want it, I have had conversations personally with the mayors and council people of Firestone and Frederick, and if we don't control the water, they will, and they'll build. So not necessarily saying that our citizens should fund an unfair portion or buy water that we don't need. I'm just saying that this will be built, and our neighbors will control it if we don't. Have we been contacted, Ken? Have you had any conversations with them?
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, Ken Newsom, Water Resources Manager. I actually get about once a month a request, information request from people who actually would like to acquire it. So if we decided to change, it would be easy to dispose of that property. But yeah, there are a lot of other entities out there looking for that water. One thing I would like to just get a tiny bit more factual information out on what was the cost estimate increase more recently that is driving the numbers that we have now. And getting a little bit to the question of, well, what do we think is going to happen on the future on the cost of this project? The actual cost estimates for construction of the reservoir itself have gone up about commensurate with cost of living over the last 4 or 5 years. There is one change that had to occur in one of the abutment designs, which is on the order of 2 or 3% of the project costs. The biggest driver in the 30% increase in cost from current estimate, basically about a year ago, to the current estimate we have now, which was February of 2018 of this year, was that the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District added a line item for an owner's contingency. So that wasn't an estimate that the project would increase, but anytime you do a major project, especially when you're bonding it, many of the other participants will go together and do a combined bond, pooled bond, and when that bond issues, they need to know that they have enough money to build the project. So the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, who is sponsoring the construction of the project, has added a very significant owner's contingency, which is essentially, if you want to think of it as just a buffer of funds that would cover any cost increases after the project has been let and while you're constructing, because they don't benefit from the project, so all the project participants need to pay for that, but that owner's contingency allows them to have money already set aside. And will there be increases? Certainly there will be, if nothing other than cost of living increases. The design is 80%, getting close to 90% done, so I'm not expecting any new surprises from design. Although again, anytime you go to construction, you open up the construction area and there are other surprises that could come up. And so that's really why Northern has this owner's contingency, significant amount of contingency for that, which I personally believe will be sufficient to cover any of those contingencies that would come up during construction. So in the past, I was always kind of feeling the estimates were a little low. I now feel the estimates are sufficient at this point.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm quite surprised that this council is going to take up how many acre feet. I thought that was settled. And the same people who voted for you guys voted for 10,000 acre feet, so we might want to keep that in mind.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Ken, I have a question about the contingency fee. Any project has to have a contingency fee, but what actually happens if all things work well and it doesn't get used up? Does that just go back into maintenance, or does it get reimbursed to various entities like us?
Mayor and Councilmember Christensen, because of the size of that contingency, I do believe that a big portion of that would probably have to go back to the participants. As part of any project of this nature, you usually try to see about a year of operation and maintenance funding set aside as a reserve. But that will far exceed that, and there really wouldn't be a reason to keep that in any other kind of a contingency fund once it's done.
Well, there is a maintenance. I mean, isn't maintenance included in this?
So maintenance will be funded on a year-by-year basis after the construction of the project. Of course, there's a 1-year warranty period. The contractor will have to fix any warranty issues. But once the project is complete and up and operational, then the participants on a pro rata basis will fund operation and maintenance. But there will be a set aside operation and maintenance reserve, usually about a year's worth.
So the dam is only guaranteed for a year? Is that what I'm hearing? I just pointing out that, man, it's still fairly early, but I just want to make sure that is in fact what I heard. No guarantees on that dam after 12 months. I'm with you. 2,000 acre feet. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem just said her dishwasher has a longer warranty than that. All right, Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I think that we need to get that RSVP going faster so that it is way before that year where warranty is over. We're going to have a lot of water in our in our town. I would like you, I don't completely understand the contingency bond. When you say the owners are authorized the bond, who are the owners?
So, Councilmember Peck, the owners of the project are the actual participants, but in the terms of the financing package, the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District will actually let the contract. So they'll be the entity that hires the contractor and has a contractual obligation to pay the contractor. So in terms of the contract for construction, the owner is Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, and actually the Windy Gap Firming Project Enterprise, to be technically correct. So they are the owner for the terms of the contract, and so they're essentially on the hook if the costs exceed the cost at the time the contract is let. And so just to get the actual numbers, the owner's contingency is $42 million. So if you want to think of it, that's a very large sum of money to cover any contingencies or cost increases.
So the jurisdictions that are involved in this project are the ones that are absorbing the debt, the bond debt, and that is why our costs are going up because of our portion of that debt?
That is correct. When after the project is bid and we actually have an actual cost of construction, that's the point where then Northern will bring that information back to all the participants, and then all of the participants will be told the final cost for construction, including the owner's contingency, and that's the amount that will need to be funded. That will need, most participants will bond it, and whether there will be a large pooled bond, and Longmont might or might not be in that, depending on what's in the best financial interest of Longmont. But whether, either way, we have to bond and fund that amount of money to the district because by law, they can't let a contract out that they don't have the money for.
Right.
And so that all that money will be, all that bonding capacity will be done prior to the actual signature of the contract.
So we don't really know what our full amount will be until the Water Conservancy comes back and tells us our portion of that debt.
That
Is
is
that
correct. That is
So
correct.
we really don't know the full cost of this yet.
You don't know the full cost until it's actually bid and we receive those. And, and then you know what the bid cost is, but then you have to build it because that's
Exactly.
when you have the other issues. When they bid it and they open the bids, they will then have the number, and that's what they will bring to us. One of the things that I wanted to be very clear with council is once we get that number, it's fundamentally, we're gonna bring that back to you all and say, here are your options. And so it's X percentage over what was estimated. So here are all your options that you can look at. And then we'll make a recommendation based on what we feel is the most advantageous option financially and explain to you all why we're making that recommendation.
Okay.
And so depending on what's the market doing at that time. We know that a lot of cities are going to go in and issue one giant debt issuance, and we have to evaluate all of those options and present you with the information, and then you have to tell us what you want to do.
Okay.
Councilmember,
Sounds interesting.
Councilmember Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm a proponent of best hopes on all things, but I'm assuming that for an owner's contingency fund, it wouldn't be based on hopes. It would be based on contractual agreements. So we're going to get our money back if it's not spent, right?
Say right, Ken. We want to hear right.
Mayor, Councilmember, that is correct. We actually are not committed to construct any of this project at this time. Once the project is bid and we know the actual bid cost, we'll know all of the financial then.
Yes.
And in that
Yes.
contract, we'll make sure that's very clear in that contract.
Well, I get somebody's going to the Conservancy's going to manage this, and they want to make certain that they're funded to do that. I just want to, I guess, make a point that we have an agreement that we're going to get our money back if it's not spent, right?
Yes.
If there's money left in the
That's
contingency
going to be,
report.
right, and that's what we're going to have to be firm.
So I wasn't trying to reinvigorate the discussion about how much to firm. That was not my point. But let me just see if I understand this. The amount of a bond that was approved by the public was tied, I thought, at the time, to the assumption or estimates of what it would cost to firm a certain number of acre feet, 10,000 acre feet. Is that true?
Up to 10,000.
Up to. So if you firmed fewer feet, you would need less money, right?
Correct.
If the cost goes up for the same amount of money, you are going to firm fewer feet. That's the logic, right? You can't firm even 8,000 acre feet if the project continues to inflate beyond the $35 million or the $41 million that were through bond and cash funds we're prepared to commit, correct? And that's what you're going to bring back as options.
Correct.
For this amount of money, unless you want to do bigger rate increases on water rates beyond what this council agreed to do a year ago, if you're not going to inflate those rates, you're only going to be able to buy so much of that reservoir, correct?
We will be bringing back that question and many other water-related questions
Yes.
within 2019.
So I guess what I would say is yes, because I think based on the timing we're seeing in terms of when we would have to do it, we don't necessarily have the time to do a different question to exceed the bond capacity that we have based on what they have. So what would have to happen is is if it exceeded that capacity, then you would have to bond up to that and then increase the rate so you could you could cash flow the other portion of that, and then you may have to look at something the next year. But those will be all the options. But it's right now. I talked to some council members, asked me the question, and I said this is a model, because right now we're going based on estimates. Until that thing is bid, we don't know what that number is going to be.
And I think it's fair to say that we would revisit everything, you know, if it's 10 times what we thought it would cost, you know, well, looks like we're buying 800 acre feet or maybe nothing at all. I don't know. All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
There was a question, there were some people who mentioned, well, I'm concerned about what else we might wind up being surprised by and paying for. When you look at this photograph, there's a little line down the bottom, which is, you know, after the Windy Gap project. It still has to come down here. Is that part of the project that the outlets from there to here, oh, it is part of it? Okay. Yes. So we won't be getting hit for anything more because those will be part of the whole project. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify about the model, because I think we were looking at you know, if we have increased cost overruns again, you know, are we on the hook for more money? I wanted to clarify that at this point we have two sources of funding, two large sources of funding for the water project. There is the set aside, which the last time the council voted on how much capacity to firm in the Chimney Hollow Reservoir, there was the discussion that we in fact had cash set aside to pay for 6,000 acre feet of that firming at least, which is a lot of money. And then we also have the bonding authority. And in the proposal that they're bringing before us now as the likeliest outcome, that bonding authority is being proposed to be used on Windy Gap after all, both because of the fit in size, because of some fiscal reasons for bonding sooner rather than later, and because that other money has a good purpose to be used, which is on the Nelson Flanders water treatment plant. And so everybody should keep in mind that the Nelson Flanders water treatment plant is also a source of potable water for the city of Longmont. So when we talk about fund mitigation or cost mitigation, remember that spending money on that can, to some extent, compensate for other things that get more expensive. I just wanted that to be out there.
I think that's the next slide. Is so council may remember we've been talking about Nelson Flanders as a project that's coming on. So that is a piece of the overall evaluation.
Jim, remember what I said, good job before, you're moving quickly? Yeah, forget about that.
Okay, well, we're not going to Nelson Flanders just yet, but we want to touch base on WTR 188, which is our regional potable water interconnections. As part of kind of that overall vision in handling and taking care of the city's water needs, there are a number of overlapping components, redundancies. This is one of them. This is the management of our water supply through 5 interconnections with the left-hand water district. In 2017, we signed an IGA with them, intergovernmental agreement, for them to provide, and us to provide for them, emergency drinking water should an emergency crop up. A major pipe breaks, something happens, we have that ability. You want to have that in your overall infrastructure, layers on layers of redundancies. So what I would throw out is, we don't want to have a situation like they are going through in Cape Town, South Africa, or what happened in Flint, Michigan, where you want to provide that level of service where when our residents turn on their water tap, they get excellent water from the city of Longmont. Design is currently underway, and we'll be doing some construction this year and following it up in 2019 to provide for those 5 interconnections.
So one thing is to give council an example. Actually, when we went through the flood, we did the interconnects to provide water to Left Hand via fire hydrants because we did not have this ability. And I had a little bit of a response to this picture, and actually Sean did too. And I will say this to this council. I've said it to those that have been on this. Listen to anything, and basically you hear that we have an infrastructure, a significant infrastructure problem to deal with as a nation. Infrastructure is failing all over the place. The one thing that I will say is you never want to be on the backside of this kind of failure, whether it's water or sewer. Been through that, and it is the worst thing you can go through. And so these types of investments are especially critical to the continual operation of our community. And to give you an example, I think, Sean, we had, 75% of the town lost water the week before Christmas for about a week and a half.
So wait, you two are managing?
Yeah.
And 75% of the town
Yeah.
lost water? Man, you guys, there's a lot of little things coming up tonight that,
So the point on this
saying,
was,
taking
when we
notes.
looked at it, fortunately for us, we had notified the council that the infrastructure was in bad shape and we had to fix it, and we were starting to do it. But the reality is failure to maintain your infrastructure leads to significant failures. And I say this, and you may hear this story again because I am exceptionally focused on it. Because I never want to be on the backside of it again, and I don't want someone after me to go through that same experience.
I'm trying to move it along. Next up, Nelson Flanders water treatment plant expansion. We are currently planning for the expansion of the plant. We're working on the scope of the valuation for by updating the user demands and providing that how much for that added redundancy and resiliency. Design is planned for 2019 with construction to follow in 2020, 2021. But currently we are working on updated user numbers to identify how much we may need to expand the plant. So final topic, transportation. $13 million worth of projects. Number 1 on the list is our TRP 001 street rehab program. It's the last time I'll say it tonight, hopefully, asset management. Followed with some transportation system management program, and then probably we'll spend a little more time on quiet zones. And then a couple of other projects, and then we'll close out with the First and Main Transit Area Station. All right, so I'm going to say asset management one more time. On our street rehab program, over 350 center lane miles. Pavement, our program involves not just maybe resurfacing, but we also do chip seal, crack seal. It is a preventative maintenance with a philosophy of right treatment at the right time. If we take a road that's 15 years old, rehab it with maybe a chip seal, crack seal, that can put off a full-blown overlay another 10 to 15 years. You can usually get 15, 20, maybe 25 years if you're lucky of useful life out of a layer of asphalt. It depends on water intrusion, depends on traffic. But in this case, what we showed here and graphically is Main Street prior to an overlay, and the product everyone likes to see is a nice clean roadway. Part of the program does involve improvements to curb and gutter and some sidewalk improvements prior to going in and rehabbing the roadway, so we get a complete product on our streets. One of the projects that's sort of like a program, projects within this program is our transportation system management. It involves our safety, multimodal, and some minor capacity issues. We put some money towards some kind of miscellaneous items. I got a list here of them that does include some small-scale projects, such as the Ken Pratt Sunset intersection improvements. That project is currently in design this year, and we'll move it forward, hopefully into construction in the next 2 years. Which brings us to our railroad quiet zones. Providing an update, we have applied for DOLA and Tiger grants in the past, putting together a consortium of some of the local municipalities in the area. We were not successful. We were also actually advised by DOLA to not even to bother anymore because they don't feel that quiet zones are going to qualify. Where we're moving to is we're going to look at some incremental steps while we work out some of the trying to fund the full-blown $7 million. Currently, we also, as part of First and Emery, will be making that a quiet zone. That was not the original plan. The plan was tied together with the South Main Station developer to provide funding because he has some improvements that involve traffic signals. And it also ties in with our trail, future trail that's going in. But we will be making that a quiet zone, taking advantage of that project, as well as the Sunset Street improvements we're going to be working on through our TSM. We'll be looking at making that a quiet zone as well. And then Ken Pratt Boulevard is a project. We didn't go over it, but that's in design now with construction later on the road. We'll incorporate a quiet zone into the crossing on Ken Pratt Boulevard. Where we're going to be going with our $30,000 that's in the budget next year, we're going to tie that in with our $50,000 that is currently in the budget in 2018, and we're going to start working on design of some of those, some of the components, some of the intersections. We'll be bringing this back in 2 weeks with some more detailed information and some options for how we can bring those projects, the rest of the city in quiet zones forward. So currently we've been working on a study in the southwest area of the city. Part of that will involve, or coming from that will involve TRP 122, which is Hover Street improvements, working on some capacity improvements and safety improvements. We're going to be undertaking design for that entire corridor, although some of the projects for construction will be broken out separately down the road. We want to do design so we have one vision for the whole corridor. And then construction is currently scheduled for this portion from Ken Pratt to Boston 2021, involving widening, signal pole mods, and some adjustments to the channelizing islands. So closing out tonight, we want to just give you a quick update on the First and Main transit area improvements. Currently, RTD is working on an infrastructure master plan, which is their schedule currently calls for them to finalize that in spring of 2019. I've listed a few of the components of that. Currently, on our effort, in mid-2019, we're going to be working on tax increment strategy development, as well as solicitation for developer partnership. That is currently underway. So, my other daughter challenged me to slip in a photo of Bumblebee. So we threw out PWNR, we are transforming Longmont. So with that, I would open it up to questions. But first, I would like to think that I could do this all by myself, but I'm just the guy talking. There were any number of staff members who assisted and provided me with the information. Steve Ransweiler is in the audience, David Bell, Annie Noble, John Gage, Ken Hewson, Becky Doyle, and of course, Dale. Want to shout out to all of those, thank them. And with that, I will open it up to any questions. And if I can't answer them, I'm going to make those people stand up and come forward.
Well done.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martin? Was this your first presentation, like full-fledged presentation?
Yes, sir.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. It's still a good presentation, despite what the mayor said earlier.
Yeah.
But I've been getting a lot of letters lately about quiet zones, and in particular along the tracks on the east side, there is a school. And it sounds like you were saying that there is no intersection mitigation actually in thinking about being installed next year. It's all design. Is that correct? Or are you thinking that maybe one or two intersections might be begun?
We're looking currently we're looking at design. But I think when we'll have a clearer picture, and into next year, in 2 weeks, when we talk about the overall transportation and look at some options that that may adjust the budget, and then we can try to factor in some construction into next year.
I just wanted to say that it would be great if we could do something that would move the sounding of horns away from that school sooner.
They've got a fairly in-depth presentation because depending on the options that council's interested in, it could impact the number. And as we've talked about before, some of those options may not be popular from from a neighborhood perspective, but it will get there in terms of do you close one street and then adjust the other, because you're trying to mitigate all of that. Because remember, the limiting factor on all of this is a quarter mile.
Yeah, I'm getting some letters about those street closings too, but
Right,
I'm
and
more worried about the school than people driving a few extra blocks.
So on the 18th, they're going to give you those options, and they're going to work council through all of that conversation.
Thank you.
Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just to back up to the Spring Gulch 2 drainage project budgeted for 2019. That's a follow-on to what was in this year's budget to widen County Line Road 1 and do shoulders, bike path on one side, shoulder on the Weld County side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have we started the work on County Line Road 1 for that project? Does anybody know? It's in design.
It is, yeah, I
it's
believe-
funded this year. Will it be finished by the end of this year? For the record, people are shaking their heads no.
Well,
So, when might that be finished?
We're currently, there's a lot going on in that section. So Spring Gulch will do some improvements to County Line Road as part of our TSM project, TSM 11. Currently, we have funding for County Line Road in this year's budget. We also, if you look at your budget closely, there is some money for next year. We're currently in the last phases of design. We're working out utility relocations. We're hopefully going to try to go to bid later this year, but we anticipate we'll see construction next year.
I guess what I really want is an affirmation or a confirmation that that project is going to get, whether it's finished by November 30th or December 30th, it's going to get finished, because this drainage, Spring Gulch drainage project is part of that, right? That's the culvert that goes under the road.
They're tied together.
Yeah,
okay. They're adjacent to each other, so part of our goal would be, we want to get, as Spring Gulch finishes, we want to finish County Line as
All
well.
right, so I have it's not a totally unrelated question, but it's not about something that's proposed, it's about what's not here. And I don't, want to throw a monkey wrench into things, but I just need to express a concern and then wonder, the flow line, gathering line that runs next to Trail Ridge Middle School is to be mitigated in some fashion, plugged or removed, once the well sites at night and Olander properties are productive. I have no idea what the implications would be for those sites if Proposition, whatever it is now, 97 was, I don't know if it's 97, what's going to be on the ballot to create 2,500-foot setbacks. If that's passed, let's assume there's going to be lawsuits. I have who knows how long those would grind on, but it feels like it could be not in 2019, but sometime after that, before, even if that measure gets passed, that there would be wells productive on those two sites, which means there's no end in sight, right, for that flow or gathering line right next to that middle school. And nothing in the budget in 2019 if they're not productive.
Mayor and Councilmember Waters, a couple of things on that. When we gave you I think when we brought the contract back for oil and gas, we talked about the gathering line, and that staff very much understands council's determination, is the way I'd put it, to get that gathering line abandoned sooner than later, and as soon as we can. No, we did not put money in our budget right now. I think our first strategy is going to be to work with the owner of the line, which is Kerr McGee, and have them move the line. We'll see how successful we are at that. If that doesn't work, then yes, I believe we would return to you to get your decision in your direction to use city funds to move the line. But I think we should first put that burden back on the owner of the line. And I believe that we can cooperatively work with them to get an alignment that is potentially either in or close to County Line Road, which is not unusual for utilities to run in, or potentially even further east towards the reservoir. But we're not at that stage yet, and I think you're correct. I think we'll all see what happens at the election. It is my last understanding with Cub Creek that they do intend to commence with drilling on the Olander site yet this year, followed by the Knight site.
In the next 60 days, or 63 days, or whatever it is to election day.
That may not be bad advice, right?
Well, far from me to be giving advice to oil and gas. I'd want to do that. But I just don't want to be in this conversation a year from now and be have it be picking it up again a year from now and not have attended to it along the way. Just one more kind of the traffic signal at Ninth and at Deerwood is scheduled to be finished in this year, in this fiscal year.
So Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters, I think we sent out to the entire council some of the issues that we're up against on
I know there's a bunch
one,
of
which
them,
is a delivery of some of the materials. We are now moving forward to get the caissons drilled and that initial work done with the potential that the signal poles might arrive yet this year. They're on order, they're coming in. We, of course, wanted to have those done before school even started this fall. That was our original goal, and that has not happened because of the delay of materials.
Could I just, make one more comment, then I'll shut up. And Councilmember Finley will be really happy about that, I'm guessing. I'll just be quiet. But and when we pick up the conversation with the school district about how interested they are in an aquatic center and how they would, whether or not they would want to participate, could we add to that conversation how interested they are getting that flow line moved away from a middle school in which their teachers and students show up every day? They've got to be at least as interested as we are, yeah? So if you could add that to the list, I'd be appreciative. Thanks.
And just as an information point for council, Jason's actively been in active conversations, I believe, with regarding the what's the site? Regarding the rider site. He's been talking to Brian Lammers about it, so we are communicating with him on that issue.
And I had dinner over at the hospital with Don Haddad and Councilmember Rodriguez. And we happened to touch on the aquatic center and ice rink, and all indications are that they're enthusiastically behind it. So we shall see. So,
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, just as a follow-up to 9th and Deerwood, our latest information from our supplier, originally they were targeting April of 2019 for delivery of signal poles and uprights. Their latest information has it at the end of November. So we will be moving forward with some of the other improvements. There's some asphalt sidewalk. We're going to redo some of that intersection, make it all ADA, tie all the sidewalk in with concrete. So we'll be working on that in the meantime. But you'll see a little bit of activity out there, but we are targeting, we should have a signal up and running by the end of this year. Just one further comment real quick. I did miss a couple of shout outs. Phil Greenwald's here. I made him show up in case there were any questions. I'm sure he's thrilled by that. We can bring him up if he wants to talk about some stuff.
Phil, you want to come up? No? You good? All right, he's good.
We also coordinated with the new redevelopment manager, Tony Chacon. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, and Joni Marsh was helpful as well. So thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I do have a question about a couple of studies that are being done, and I'm wondering if we're duplicating them. It looks like the sustainability option is doing a $40,000 for a service center campus sustainability to study and to address energy and water conservation and stormwater management. And then we're having a $125,000 study for business process analysis consulting for the sanitation enterprise to provide a study of the business process, waste services, and how they can be improved. It sounds to me like these are the same study that two different organizations are doing.
So Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck, on the 18th, we're also going to be talking about and giving you a full update on all the sustainability programs. Those two will be part of that.
Okay.
I can tell you the Service Center one is really looking at that, what is now probably a 40-year-old building, and trying to figure out the energy efficiency of the building and what improvements might make sense to get underway with, that kind of thing. So, but we are going to be talking about the sustainability programs in general as well.
To be continued.
On the 18th. Yes, and
Yeah,
the other
the
one is
solid
solid waste. And we're going to talk about both of those.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you guys so much. Good job. All right, let's move on to,
Oh, no.
oh, we have one more?
Let me just wrap up really
Oh,
quick and
okay,
let you
all right.
know that so for next week, we're going to be talking about our priority-based budgeting and what our 2019 budget looks like
Okay.
from that perspective. We'll be doing a general fund budget summary and then a public safety fund budget summary. I made one note that we need to bring back some information on our public improvement fund bonding issuance from the prior issuance. And I just wanted to let you all know that if you need any additional information that has not been part of any of these presentations or any future presentation, please let us know and we'd be happy to get that for you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. That it? All right. Now, thank you so much. Staff, you did great. All right, let's move on to mayor and council comments. I'm going to give the opportunity. Councilman Rodriguez, do you want to say anything? You are a wise man. You were just wise. All right.
Sincere.
Councilmember Finley.
Oops.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I appreciate that about Aaron as well. You know, just as we were just reminded, I might suggest that as we go through the budget process, if you have if you have big questions, call them up and ask them prior to the meeting and have those answers either given to you individually or made part of the presentation so everybody can have that same information. It'll save us a lot of time in the next month.
All right, nobody else is the queue. I've got a few things. First of all, I will not be at the MCC meeting this week. Joan, would you mind sitting in my place? All right, I figured. So Sean, make sure she gets there safely. Instead of sitting in the galley, take your seat at the table and just represent us well. Next, we were tired last time, but a few of us went up to the Northern Arapahoe. And it was just an incredible experience. We haven't had a chance to debrief as staff, but first night they gave us a wonderful, welcoming reception. There was Native American dancing and food and interaction, and then 2 days of presentations, and got a chance to tour their reservation. And just dawned on me driving back on Saturday. It was really it was for those of us who went, I would describe it as a very spiritual experience. And I thought to myself, well, why did I enjoy it so much? There's nothing up there. There's no water parks. There's no movie theater. There's just nothing to do. And so I was like, God, why in the world was I feeling so blessed to interact with these people? It's just the people and the culture. I've never had an opportunity to meet someone who was a group that was so kind, and after having been treated so unfairly for multiple generations, and I just thought it was awesome. But anyway, they're coming here on November 19th, 20th, and 21st. Their elected representatives are coming down. The Northern Arapahoe Business Council, they're elected much like we are. But they're also bringing down their traditional tribal leadership. And so I've offered, a few of them will be staying in my home, a few of them will be staying in Councilmember Finley's home. Anybody else willing, if anyone else is willing and wants to offer a bedroom or two in your home, let me know. We're making arrangements. I don't want you to feel left out in the event that you wanted to, but you couldn't. Joan? Okay, great. So I'll put Joan down on the list. And then I was wondering if we wouldn't be willing to have a dinner maybe on that first night they're here with council and city staff. I will not be cooking. Thank you, Councilmember Peck. So maybe in any funds maybe could come out of the council contingency fund. That okay? All right. So anyway, I'll chat with Harold and bring back any ideas. But what they want to do, they expressed they want to tour open space. They specifically, Harold, want to connect with their counterparts like last time on they'd like a tour of the broadband of LPC, our water, just that kind of stuff. They want to see the Button Rock. They want to see the tour that Sandy mentioned, the 3-hour tour. But Carter Lake, Button Rock, Sandstone. They also want to look at some of the areas maybe adjacent to those places. They're looking at building a cultural center, which would be kind of cool. A live action, interactive, as the Arapaho once were. That'd be a fantastic draw, I think. Anyway, there's all kinds of things that they want to discuss. And so they'll be here the 19th, 20th, and 21st, those evenings, and then go back, I think, on the 22nd. Anyway, and then that was pretty much it for me. Mayor Pro Tem Christensen.
I'd like to reiterate what you just said, that they were incredibly kind and generous, and they fed us well and put us up in a very nice hotel for a very inexpensive amount of money. And it was really an honor to meet their elders and be able to talk to a whole lot of people about how their government works and how their tribe functions and the various things. So I really want us to be able to be up to snuff and offer them our generosity too, particularly in just being open-hearted and letting them know that they're welcome here. And we can't make up for 400 years of brutality, genocide, and theft, but we can at least treat them with respect and dignity and fairness and let them know they're welcome here. So.
All right, nobody else is in the queue. So with that, Harold?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Okay. Eugene?
No comments, Mayor.
Awesome. Again, staff, thank you very much for the presentations this evening. We're adjourned.